Sac State offensive lineman Jackson Slater is receiving significant interest from many NFL teams, and he shared with us what he's hearing from those franchises.
It has been a hectic few months, to say the least, for Jackson Slater, star offensive lineman that has joined us for the Sacramento State 2025 NFL Draft Prospect. We are talking Senior Bowl to the Combine, just finished up his pro day. Jackson, first question, man. Have you had any time to just sit, relax, breathe? It has been a hectic few months, man.
Yeah, I took a couple days after the pro day to kind of rest for a second, because it's been, a long process, like you were saying. I feel like for me it's been kind of a drug out deal, because it was, since the end of the season, a few months to the Senior Bowl, then, a month till the Combine, then another month to my pro day. So, and like I've had to do stuff at every stop along the way. So, I did take a second, but we're getting back to work right now. So.
Oh, good that you got to take that little bit of a break. And Ryan's alluding to how your name has been really driving up throughout this process. And you have gone from, I think, just the general media not knowing a lot about FCS guys to being cast as a potential day 3 steal. You started off with an awesome Senior Bowl performance. And I just wanted to hear from you, like, what were your expectations going into that? What were you hoping to get out of that performance?
Yeah, I think for me it was just raise my stock however I could. Obviously the one-on-ones are a big deal there, so was hoping to do well in those. I think especially coming from a small school, all the FCS guys that were in that game, I think it's an especially big week for them, because the biggest knock on us is, the jump in competition. Can they handle it? And going to the Senior Bowl with all these top prospects from bigger schools. I think it's a big week for the FCS guys. So for me, it was just to show that I can hang with those guys and I can, have success, and the level of competition wouldn't be an issue for me. And I think I showed that for sure.
So behind the scenes, preparation wise, so obviously we have seen you public facing in, obviously for what you did down in Mobile. We saw what you were able to do at the Combine, the Pro Day. I know that you were able to showcase some of the numbers and put them out so people could see that. But I want to hear about the preparation, if you can, Jackson. Like, where have you been training? Who have you been training with? And how beneficial has that whole process been to having your stock continue to rise with the performances that you've been able to kind of stack together?
Yeah, so I was at Exos in Phoenix, Arizona for the first couple months leading up to the Combine. So was training there, was a really good experience there. The O-line coach there was Mike Pollock, who spent some time in the league and has been training guys for the pre-draft stuff.
Arizona State, right? Arizona State?
Arizona State.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And my agent actually represented him when he was coming out as well. But yeah, good experience there. I think really helped me prepare for the Senior Bowl, as well as the Combine, what I was able to do there. And then since the Combine, really just been kind of training on my own. Kind of took the plan that Exos had for me, kind of did that here, as well as, reached out to some of my old strength coaches and trainers to kind of see, how could the big thing was like improve my vertical, and then obviously at least check the boxes on the agility stuff, the shuttle and 3-cone. So I felt like, I had a good process leading up to the pro day and was able to have success there as well.
So this whole process, though, you've tested well, you've continued to shine. The media props you up, but like our opinion, it doesn't matter in terms of where you're going to get drafted. I'd love to hear, what is the feedback from the NFL have been? Has there been any change in the way that they've communicated with you since they talked to you when you were at Sac State and they were visiting practices? Has there been maybe a pickup of an attention that you've been getting from NFL teams?
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. I mean, especially over the last, 3 weeks, been having a Zoom call with the team and their O-line coach pretty much every day. So probably had, close to 20 of those so far, which have been really fun. But yeah, I'd say definitely an increased interest as the process has kind of come along. I think, I've handled the process well, and I think it's obviously helped my stock grow as time's gone on. So I think definitely an increased interest compared to, just scouts rolling through the school and just kind of understanding who I am for sure.
From like the personal side for a second, I don't know if you've had any time to think about this, Jackson, as far as like just, I mean, obviously you're a Big Sky guy, so you're, out on the West Coast a lot, playing football the last few years, but then you get a chance to go down to Mobile, Alabama. You get a chance to go down to Arizona, like you said, and train, and then you get to go out to Indianapolis. Like, you've been all over the place the last few months, man, which I'm thinking, how surreal has just this process been for you overall, as far as like you've been able to attack a dream that a lot of people have had, a lot of people have not been able to achieve it, but like you have had the opportunity to live it firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I've really like stepped back and like embraced how cool the process has really been so far. And I think it's a good thing. I think keeps me working hard, keeps me taking stuff day by day. And, I personally think it's a good thing. But, if you asked my freshman year of college, Jackson Slater, how cool is it that what you're doing now? Like, I mean, he'd be on the floor. Like, this was kind of the goal, like seeing – I like to follow the FCS guys throughout my career. So like the Mason McCormicks, the Braxton Jones, all the North Dakota and South Dakota State guys that have kind of done similar things and had a good process, had a good Senior Bowl, tested well. So to kind of be in the conversation with those type of guys is really cool for sure.
You're a great athlete, so I'd love to have some context for our viewers here. A non-football athletic feat. What is the craziest thing that you can do? Maybe it's dunking. Maybe it's something Jalen Knoll brought up, how he's a decent golfer, which was kind of funny that was what he told us. But like, if there's any sport that the craziest thing that you can do athletically that you'd love to boast about.
Yeah, I can dunk, but was a bit of a baseball player back in the day. So
okay,
have some home runs. There's a couple on my Instagram, I think, if you scroll down far enough. So I got some power behind the plate there. But yeah, I'd say
What position were you playing in baseball?
In baseball, I was first base, pitcher, and catcher. Okay. What kind of I think started my leave from baseball, I guess, was my sophomore year. I was on JV, and I was like the only catcher on the JV squad, so I caught like 20 games in a row. And I think a part of that was kind of like, I don't know if I love baseball as much as football, and maybe I could put my time into football. So that's kind of when I transitioned from multi-sport guy to mainly a football guy. But I mean, I'd say those are a couple skills I have for sure.
I love it, man. Well, it was a very good decision by you back then. You took some wear and tear off
your
your knees for a couple of years. Yeah, now you get to have a longer NFL career, which is great. I wanted to ask about Sac State, and this is going to go a little bit more into like the technical side, I guess, as far as like how you like to play the game of football. For people that don't, and Joe actually played FCS football. I'm a avid watcher of FCS football, so I watched a lot of Sac State the last couple of years. Cam Scattaboo obviously is a guy that that was very good for you guys. Marcus Fulcher was a running back that I liked a ton as well. So Asher O'Hara, I think, was the quarterback a couple years ago too, and he was a hell of a runner. I want to ask about just describe yourself as a football player, man, because for people that haven't seen Sac State football, you guys run the ball a lot. So you're super physical up front, but describe your style and how you feel like you kind of what's your sell as a football player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of describe myself as like a savvy athlete. I think I do a lot of good stuff with my hands in protection, as well as I think I move really well in, whether it's on counter or pin and pull or power. I think that's kind of where I shine the most. But I think at the end of the day, just a guy that works well within a unit of offensive linemen. I feel like I've done a good job at leading guys and making sure everyone's, going to the right spot, doing the right thing, having the right footwork. And it's a lot of little stuff like that kind of culminates into how successful your group is. Are you healthy? Are you doing the right stuff off the field? And I think, in my time at Sac State, we had a really good culture in the offensive line room of just, guys that like to put their head down and do the right thing. And, I think it was really awesome to be a part of a lot of successful groups here. So.
obviously there's some news that came out recently. We've known that Sacramento State has kind of wanted to make the plunge to FBS at some point. Like they haven't been shy about that, but obviously they're taking the necessary steps to hopefully make that jump in somewhat in the near future. How proud are you of that? Because without the success that you guys were able to sustain, the program you were able to be a part of the last couple of years, that wouldn't really be a thing that would be sustainable to make that jump anytime soon. So just, I guess, the news of that jump and how proud you are of where this program is going ultimately the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool. I think, the longer I've been here, the more I've kind of learned that, like, historically, we haven't really been the most successful football program. Had a couple winning seasons back in the 80s and 90s. And, besides that, I mean, not historically super successful. So to kind of come in kind of in the height of, that success in this program, I think was really cool. And to be able to contribute, I'd say, a pretty great deal to that and in my role on the team. So it was really awesome. Then, hopefully being able to come back in, 5-10 years, and we got a big stadium. We're playing Pac-12 football or something. And, I think it'd be really cool. And to know I played a role in kind of that jump and all the, I guess, eyes that are on the program now and the funding that's coming in. And so to know I was one of the guys that played a role on those teams that, ultimately led us here is really cool for sure.
I'd love to hear, and that's also amazing to kind of hear this ascension for the Sacramento State program. It's really cool to see them making that potential jump. Getting back to your play, though, what's one play call that when it comes in onto the field that you're just excited for? What's one call that you're like, oh, hell yes, I'm going to run somebody over, I'm going to drive somebody into the ground? What's that one call that gets you excited?
Yeah, it's an easy one for me. So it'd be Pirate Right. We have a new staff with a new offense now, so the play calls don't matter anymore. So Pirate Right, it was basically tight end wing power, and I'm on the backside. And I'm basically pulling around usually for a nickel or a safety or someone that's a force defender. And there's a lot of big blocks. And, it was usually at least an 8-yard run. So it was a pretty automatic play for us. So
love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Always looking forward to getting to smoke a defensive back is always a good answer.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love that you preface that by there being a new staff, obviously, coming into Sac State. Because for a second, I was like, oh, no, I hope someone's not scouting this to get the play calls on this podcast right now. But that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Curious, because I know that you obviously went up against a lot of great players down in Mobile specifically in those one-on-ones that you talked about. And this question could include maybe some players that you played during your career, in actual games. But are there a couple guys that kind of stick out as far as like guys that you felt like were really great matchups, guys that you guys, you had some battles with?
Yeah, I mean, in Mobile, I think Walter Nolan and Omar Norman Locke come to mind. I think, had quite a few reps against them in the one-on-ones and in the team stuff. And I think, we made each other better there. And then just throughout my career, I mean, really there's a lot of great football players throughout the Big Sky. Alex Gubner was a guy from Montana a few years ago. Sebastian Valdez was a Montana State guy that was solid. I don't know this guy's name, but number 23 on Fresno State last year was really the only guy that gave me trouble. And he was a solid player too. I think he transferred somewhere else. But, I think the more I go through this process, and especially being at the Senior Bowl, I think I've learned that, everyone's just playing the same game. You just got different colors on. And, in my opinion, the FCS versus the FBS isn't a crazy jumping competition, at least to me. So I think there's a lot of great players, especially in the Big Sky and the Missouri Valley, I think are, a couple of the token conferences that, pump out NFL players and always play competitive football. So that's my 2 cents there on FCS football for sure.
Last question that I had, though, for you, Jackson. I'd love to hear who are your top 3 favorite offensive linemen that you have watched in the NFL? Could be guys that are retired, could be guys currently in the NFL. Just 3 guys that you're like, man, that guy is so fun to see play.
Yeah, I'd say Mason McCormick, Quinn Miners, and Jason Kelsey are probably my top three.
Ooh.
I try to be pretty diverse in interior offensive line play. So, obviously Quinn and Mason are both, guards right now at the next level, and both played guard in college. So watched a good bit of them, as, especially Mason McCormick when he was at South Dakota State. We had a lot of film from them, so studied up on him going into my senior year and kind of tried to emulate his play style, because he obviously, did well in the draft and then played a lot of football last year. And then, Kelsey's a guy that's always super fun to watch. And, another guy that played guard in college, but, ultimately made this transition to center in the NFL. And I think, depending on what a team sees for me in the future, I think that's a possibility. But I think I can play all three interior spots pretty efficiently. So it kind of depends on what a team wants to do, I would say.
And Quinn Miners literally came on this podcast with us before. So
Did he?
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in good company there.
Yeah.
Again, joined by Jackson Slater, offensive lineman, Sac State. Only a few weeks away from the 2025 NFL Draft. Jackson, I know it's hectic, man, but we really appreciate you for taking some time. Thank you so much, and best of luck in here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.